Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Ana Navarrete. I am the Program Director for the Spartan Student Resource Center. Today, I'm really excited to introduce to you a guest speaker who will be talking to us about graduate school options for students who are undocumented. So for today, we're going to be focusing on the specific fields of humanities, social sciences, and law. But we will certainly answer any questions that you may have if you don't feel like your major or your field is being represented. I do want to remind folks that this is part of a three-part workshop series. The second one will be coming in next Friday, where we will be focusing in STEM, business, and engineering as well. And on November 19th, we will be having the third and final workshop to talk about graduate school funding options for Undocu scholars. So before we begin, I kind of want to establish some ground rules for how to interact in this presentation. As you can see, we're here on campus at San Jose State, but we do have audience members online who are also engaging with this presentation. And so for folks who are online, you can feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the chat function. We will have someone in the background helping answer those questions. And I believe we would be able to also allow you to speak up if you decide to, instead of using the chat, if instead you want to ask the questions directly to the presenter, please feel free to use a hand function and we will redirect those questions to the presenter. If you would like to ask questions but would like to remain anonymous and you are online, you can also message those questions directly to me, Ana Navarrete, and you'll see my name on the Zoom function. And I will go ahead and ask those questions on your behalf. So it won't be completely anonymous, but at least I will guard your information so no one else knows who's asking these questions. All right, so for no further ado, I want to talk a little bit about our next presenter, Juan Reis. So Juan Reis has come on board to San Jose State to work with us as our Life After College consultant. And so to tell you a little bit about Juan, so Juan transferred from De Anza College in 2015 and double majored in critical race and ethnic studies and philosophy at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Then he completed his master's in philosophy in 2019. Juan served as a graduate student mentor for the Undocumented Student Services for his graduate program at UC Santa Cruz, and he later became an independent contractor serving as the assistant coordinator for the Undocumented Student Services at UCSC. After taking a break, Juan launched his limited liability company to engage with UCSC as Entrepreneur Pilot Program Manager. Currently, Juan provides workshops, consulting, and education training on pursuing graduate school and independent contracting for undocumented scholars. And in his free time, Juan enjoys music, cooking, and walking in the forest. And so, Juan, if you can come up.
Right. Thank you for the introduction, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to inform you of some of the things I've learned along the way navigating graduate school and entrepreneurship as an undocumented individual. So we'll get started. A little bit about myself. Who am I and why am I here? As it was mentioned, I am going to be leading a series of workshops, and I did acquire my master's at UC Santa Cruz in philosophy, but I do have a training in interdisciplinary fields in critical race and ethnic studies. I ended up launching Nepantla Philosophy to with the mission to nurture equity, diversity, and inclusion in higher education through programming, professional training, and consulting. And it's very much in line with my expertise in doing academic programming and philosophy, but also providing resources to resource centers, to students, educators. And I want to highlight that I am undocumented and I don't have DACA and I'm an entrepreneur. So in my workshops, I'm going to teach you how it is that you could be undocumented without work authorization and legally work as an independent contractor, vendor, and have clients in universities and nonprofit organizations and so on and so forth. So we got to start by taking a break, a breath, because I've been told that I am going to give you so much information that some folks think like, oh, this is like a full-time job just to prepare to go to grad school, or I didn't have a clue it took this much work and research. So bear with me, let's take a breath. going to be okay. At any point, I also encourage you to interact, send me questions, raise your hand. If you have some insights to share in some of the information that I'm providing, please do so. Don't wait till the end. We could do that together. And I do want to disclose that uh, folks have said I'm an expert in this field, and I just want to acknowledge that this is like an ongoing expertise that you develop because it is very much uncharted territory to speak about graduate school for undocumented students. So bear with me, folks. The information I'm going to provide is going to be introductory. It's going to be very general, but I do invite you to visit my office hours. Any of the sections I cover, we can go more in depth in one-on-one consultations. So there's going to be generally like 4 parts in this presentation. I'm going to cover general and undocumented student related considerations on why you might want to go to graduate school. I'm also going to cover important aspects of all applications, like how do you meet deadlines, request letters of recommendation, take care of grad school testing for admission purposes, requesting fee waivers, what is the kind of sample you might have to provide for your program. And the third section is going to be on the statement of purpose versus a personal statement. There are subtle differences. We'll cover that. And lastly, I'll provide you some resources. I'm sorry, is it okay if I remove my mask? Oh. I can't talk so much. I'm sorry. I'll wipe everything down. Okay. So the undocumented student related considerations, I provide here several links. It's very important for folks when you're considering what sorts of programs, where do you envision yourself living for, let's say, 2 to 3 years for a master's program or 5 to 7 years. The location may be very important, right? Not only because of what are the state and institutional policies that are available to you, but also it might make a difference if there are checkpoints that you might want to consider, you might want to avoid. So I provide you here several resources that go state by state. What are the state laws and policies for undocumented students, and divided into states that are highly inclusive and have enacted institutional financial aid, state aid, or some states, as you can see, the red states here, that altogether don't want to deal anything whatsoever to do with undocumented students. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection checkpoints are surrounded 25 to 100 miles from every border in the United States. This might also be another consideration you might have, right? Maybe there's a program, let's say in California, in San Diego, and there's a checkpoint in between San Diego and, say, you live north of San Clemente. And so it might be a consideration for you to be aware of, where do I see myself living? What sort of environment do I want around me when I'm studying and engaging in research? So unfortunately, this is something that some of us might want to consider when we're applying to programs. Now onto generally for grad school programs, with the exception of this year, a lot of programs are waiving their admissions testing. So for example, programs in the humanities or social sciences may require you to complete the GRE. And it's a test. It's about a 4-hour test that you sign up for ahead of time. You have to pay out of pocket and you have to prepare. It's a very intimidating experience, which we can talk about that a little further. The test is getting waived at a lot of programs due to the COVID pandemic. So it makes a difference in terms of, is it something you want to go through right now where you apply for grad school because tests are waived, or maybe next year there's a requirement for you to take the test. Not only do you have to go through the test, but the test determines what sort of financial aid package do you get. So in the humanities and social sciences, you have to do the GRE. In law school, you have to do the Lsat. And for example, in business, you have to do the Gmat. And there are still other considerations that you have to be mindful of when you enroll in the test. You're going to have to provide a government issued identification, such as U.S. driver's license, passport, the original document valid, displaying your full name, and including recent photographs. However, if for any reason you cannot provide the documents, ETS is the organization that's in charge of enlisting you or signing you up for the GRE. You can reach out to them. You can request accommodations or waivers to work around if you do not meet identification requirements. And I provide you the link here. This is only an example. There's also you will be able to get access to this presentation and see the checklist for the Gmat. So the Gmat has a very specific checklist. Do you meet all of these requirements in order for you to come and take the test? Okay, there's an important aspect of being undocumented and applying to grad school. There's always going to be a section where you're going to have to disclose your citizenship status. No federal law requires proof of citizenship when you're applying to grad school. It's very much your personal decision to disclose your status. However, it is typically unavoidable in an application to disclose your status. And the reason being is that the university or the institution uses this information for financial aid purposes and to gauge the diversity of the matriculating student body. Also, it's to provide you with resources. So you don't have to do it, but it becomes almost unavoidable. And in the long run, it works in your benefit. You have to remember that this information is safeguarded by FERPA, except like if there's a court order where the university has to get summoned to provide certain records about you, or for legitimate education interests, like let's say you're applying to a program at another institution, so they request whatever files are, whatever records are in file at your host institution, or like if they create a directory information of we issued certain scholarships to folks with this background. They won't mention your status, but they might mention like your race or ethnicity. So it is, I acknowledge it is intimidating. It's a bit daunting. How do you deal with this? There's no way to work around it. You will encounter it, and you might have to put like, when they always give you an option for selecting your citizenship, then you can select other, and you have to be genuine and honest. You can't lie about these things because you'll have to render documents at some point. Now, independent from being undocumented, basic considerations when you're applying to grad school is you have to ask yourself why. Why is it that you want to take on this path? What are you trying to get out of it? Where do you see yourself in the future? Where do you see yourself studying? What are some expectations that you've built, right? What do your network, your peers tell you about grad school? Is it something that you want to pursue and engage on your own? What sort of degrees are out there for you? What are the benefits or the costs? Some reasons that folks pursue grad school is to gain more knowledge about a subject or a major, something that some exploration that was sparked as an undergraduate, certain questions you still want to engage with, your particular research interest that you want to expand, or your proposed career requires it. Like say you want to practice law, well, you need to get a law degree. You need to go to law school, you need to take the bar exam, things of that nature. Or perhaps you might just want to be a better candidate in the job market. Right now, more and more folks are gaining education in the universities as opposed to years before where high school was the highest form of degree. Now it's like graduate school. It might make you a better candidate for the job market. What are the differences in programs? In the humanities and social sciences, at least we can weigh things out, right? We have master's degrees, which are 2 to 3 years to complete. It's more of a specialized training and career oriented, where in the long run, you're spending less time and less money in this degree, as opposed to a doctorate program, which is 5 to 7 years to complete. It might require you to engage in professional training through fellowships or teaching assistantships. and it's mostly research oriented. You are creating knowledge, you're contributing to the pool of knowledge, theoretical work, the information that we have out there. So they're very two different things. Master's level programs may include Masters of Arts, Social Sciences, Masters of Business Administration, Masters in Social Work, Masters in Fine Arts, Masters in Family Therapy, and these are very career-oriented fields, right? As opposed philosophy doctorate in whatever field, right? Whether it be biology, psychology, that's doctorate level work where you are contributing your own project, your own theoretical work to the pool of knowledge. You also have professional degrees such as the JD to practice law, a medical degree to practice medicine, or DDS to practice dentistry, or you might want to be an optometrist. These are different sorts of professional degrees that you can gain through graduate school. Now, on the application components, the admission test, as I mentioned earlier, is mostly waived in 2021. And some of us are taking advantage of this opportunity and applying to programs which are usually very competitive. And because of your GRE scores, you might not make the cut, right? There are other components which are taken into consideration. We're going to go more in depth in the order in which they usually get taken into consideration. So you also have to be prepared to render unofficial transcripts in all your applications from all the institutions you studied at, your undergraduate GPA, your personal statement, your statement of purpose. Why are you intending to apply to this program? Why are you a good fit? You will provide in programs requiring like PhD applications 3 letters of recommendation. I know that in state universities, certain master's programs don't request letters of recommendation altogether. There might be an optional 1 letter section, but I'll tell you how to request those and who to request them from. And depending on what program you're applying to, you might have the option of providing your CV or resume, which are subtly different. We'll cover that too. So first component, and I provided a packet which I've compiled, information that is very easy to access, very clear, very watered down. There's worksheets for you to fill in, and it's helped me in my trajectory and other folks, some of my peers. So the first item that is mentioned there is the timeline, right? And I provide you 2 different timelines, one month by month, the other, like if you're in a semester or a quarter system, how would you divide these tasks? But generally, let's say you're looking at quarter systems or the systems of or the the quarters of the year. In the summer, you would begin to narrow down your research interests, right? You're looking for programs. What is interesting out there? You're taking this general perspective of things, and you might want to prepare for the graduate admissions test. In the fall, you're working on your application. You're completing every component of the application that it's requesting, where you upload your transcripts, your background, your citizenship status, things of that nature. You're requesting your letters of recommendation well in advance, at least 1 month. It could be the shortest amount of time, but it's ideally 3 months where you're asking your professors, I'm going to apply to these programs. This is the list of the programs, and I'm going to need a letter recommendation. You're also working on your personal statement and your statement of purpose. So who are you? What is your academic trajectory up until that point for your personal statement? And what is your purpose in applying to this department? Why would we want to take you in? Why are you the ideal candidate? And why are we the ideal program for you, right? And you're thinking of how are you going to fund your application? Do you request a fee waiver from the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion or the graduate division? Probably the graduate advisor in that department. Are you going to request a fee waiver and fill it out and turn it in on time? Or are you paying your $100 to $150 application fee per program? Now in the winter, You're maintaining your good grades, you're engaging, reaching out to professors, probably grad students in those departments, and establishing a relationship for you to complete your application and hopefully turn it in by the end of winter. December, January is when applications are mostly due, and you're waiting for an admission response and start making decisions in the spring. Very brief timeline more or less breaks down the main components, but as I mentioned in the worksheet, it's broken down month by month, um, uh, academic year, and for example, if you're in the semester system or quarter system. Here is another detailed timeline which I've broken down. These are examples, and there's also the sheet for you to fill out and complete at your own leisure. I provide you examples of everything that I mentioned, like what are you doing in terms of your academics, your research, and the grad school plans that you have in each academic year. Say you're a sophomore and then you're a junior and so on and so forth. It breaks down per quarter. So this is one of the most specific and concrete detailed timelines that I've been able to use, that breaks down by categories. Okay, so we're going from very general to very specific. Yes, please. Pauses, questions, comments, suggestions. I know that we had a grad student who signed up for this workshop. I encourage you to jump in if you want to say what worked for you, what certain aspects I've been looking over that might have not included. For grad students out there, please do contribute, or anyone else. Okay, okay. Oh, thank you. So now, how do you start breaking down what are your top schools? Which one is your priority? Which one might be your backup school that you're like, well, I could live with going to that school, but it's not my top priority. So you very much like in Christmas or I don't know your birthday, you generate a wish list, right? This is another resource that I provide you in a blank copy. What's the university name? What's the school name or college for that particular program? What degree is it? Because you might be considering PhD programs as opposed to master's programs. One mention that I forgot to do earlier is that master's programs are usually self-funded, or you have to get fellowships or scholarships to support you to pay. PhD programs for students that have work authorization are tied to teaching assistantships. And what that means is that the department uh, admits you as a grad student. You work as a teacher assistant by running discussion, helping grade papers, helping read the materials of the class, co-teach the class with the professor, and you get paid for that, whether it be a semester or per quarter. What that means is that you are working for the institution as a graduate student. They are investing in your education to where your tuition and fees and health insurance are waived, meaning that you pretty much have a way to pay for your graduate education as opposed to the master's, which is shorter, but gaining funding in a master's program is highly unlikely. It's not very common unless it's a private institution and you get a full ride. So what I'm trying to say here is that you might have in your wish list PhD programs, and you might also have master's programs. One thing to look at is that there are PhD programs which offer you a master's in passing. What that means is that you will engage in the program after 2 years, 2 to 3 years, you fulfill your coursework, you're ready to then propose, this is what I'm going to do for my dissertation, for my doctoral project. At that point, the institution might tell you, the department might tell you, look, this is great. Here's your master's. We would like for you to stay and continue to the duration of your completion of your doctorate, and you can take your master's. Or they might tell you, here's your master's, you completed the coursework. However, we don't think you're going to make it and complete the PhD. What that means is that you have the option to leave with a paid master's because you worked as a teacher assistant. They waived your tuition. So be on the lookout for programs that do offer masters in passing, because some programs might say we don't offer a master's at all. This is just PhD work. It might be shortened the amount of time that you do your PhD, but then you're like really thinking about, what if I don't make it? Am I going to get a master's in passing or not? Anyway, those are the sorts of things that you can mention in these small notes here that you can make for yourself in this wish list. Other things you might want to include in this wish list are like the faculty members in that department that you are eyeing, whose work might align with your interest, their emails, and other notes like, does the application provide a fee waiver? Is there a priority deadline where you might apply ahead of time? Um, the priority deadline might open a month before the deadline is due for the program. However, you might get a special consideration for funding. And so these are some of the things you might want to jot down in your wish list ahead of time. Question? Yes. So let me backtrack a little bit here, folks. For I know that some of you have mentioned, what is grad school to begin with. Let me remind you, when you apply to San Jose State University or to other UC universities, you apply to the university. You're applying to the school. When you apply to a graduate program, you're only applying to that particular program, which has its own set of funds and pockets of money and opportunities for students. So that department might have an application for their program, whether it be the master's or PhD or whatever, and the university may provide you a different application for financial aid. And so then some schools some schools mention that in their application details, and you might be mindful, okay, I have to submit two separate applications to, for example, UCLA or UC Berkeley, where I'm applying for the School of Engineering to their department, but I'm also applying for financial aid to UCLA, to the bigger pot of funds. Other schools might include it as part of their program application, to where you're only applying, for example, to cultural studies in UC Davis, and they have their internal fellowships, and there's only one application to submit. The main application component for financial aid, irrespective of it being two applications or one, is your personal statement. Your personal statement is the one that speaks about your background, your academic trajectory, certain identifying factors which may align you directly with the scholarship or with the fellowship or with the grant that is particular to students meeting those identity criteria. So I know that certain universities offer the personal statement as optional. However, you always want to complete it, because in the long run, it aligns you with financial aid options. Now, a little more on that. Oh, we have one more question.
Another question.
Excellent.
I have another question, Juan.
Thank you.
So this is from our audience. How do we go about to look for a program that offers the option? Sorry, that offers that option in regard. Okay, let me repeat this again. This is going back to the point that you were bringing up about there being PhD programs where you can get a master's along the way. And so the question is, how do we go about to look for a program that offers that option in regards to offering both the master's and the PhD program?
So these are the details that are usually mentioned in the graduate program website. And for example, they tell you, like, you look at application requirements, And those requirements are going to line up like, are you applying for the master's, or are you applying for the PhD, or are you applying for the master's PhD program? And so then these are usually the indications. Other programs are very clear. And I mentioned cultural studies earlier. I've been looking into their program at UC Davis. They explicitly tell you on their graduate application website, we are not taking any master students, only PhD applications. And so then that's where you know, okay, they don't offer masters in passing, it's just PhDs. And when it's a highly selective program like that, it might require you to have a master's already, because it's a very selective program that will have like 100 applicants and 10 placements, and you might be one of 10 people that gets admitted. But it's usually on your graduate application requirements section or the frequently asked questions. If the information is not there, you can email the graduate coordinator, or one of the graduate students, for example, and say, hey, I'm wondering, I'm going to be applying. Do you offer a master's in passing, or is this exclusively just a PhD program? These are the these are a couple different ways to find out. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for the question, folks. Now, let me demystify a little bit, or clarify, or get more in detail into what is the personal statement and what is the statement of purpose. Okay, so the personal statement will be, like I said earlier, for financial aid considerations and for cohort considerations. You might think that you have to fit this mold, the ideal student, the one that faculty wants to work with. And some of that is true, but I want you to pay special mind to being yourself. You are already unique, and you're going to form part of a cohort of students. So you don't have to pretend to be someone you're not, or to fit a mold of research interests that are not yours. Be true to yourself. The pool of students, if it's 10 placements, 10 students that are going to be admitted, every single one of those students brings something different to the table. And so it's important for you to showcase in your personal statement those personal unique aspects of yourself, right? So what was your personal trajectory? What is your journey to your career path? What are some skills that have that build your character? Don't only mention, as we are very well aware of being undocumented in this condition, the hindrances, the limitations that you have. Mention how you overcame those. How do you keep those at bay and still academically succeed, and provide high quality research? Um, Now, your statement of purpose is different. It's not necessarily about you and your background, your personal trajectory. Your statement of purpose is for research interest and also for cohort considerations, right? Because you might bring to the table a very important, particular way of looking at things through research, and they want that particular perspective in the cohort. So your statement of purpose will be the main component, which, and it's the first component in an admissions committee, the first 1 to 2 pages that they will read and determine, is this the student that we are looking for this cohort, for this department? Are we the ideal department to meet that student's research interest? If you are not a fit for that department, if there are grammatical errors, if there are mistakes, if it's not to the point, what is your project? Who do you intend to work with in that institution? In those 1 to 2 pages, everything else, they just won't look at it. So, first is your statement of purpose. What do you come here to do, right? How will you apply your skills to achieve your goal? um, what are some aspects of your interest, of your academic interest, and how do they align to the department? How does that department guide your interest? what faculty directly align to those interests that you have and to the work that you propose to do. And so these 1 to 2 pages will be the most important 2 pages in your application process, where afterwards is like the letters of recommendation, who recommends you, and then they might look at your writing sample. But the first and most important is your statement of purpose. Question?
Yeah. Another question from our audience.
Okay.
Do programs usually ask for both statements of purpose and personal statements, or does it depend on the program where you are applying?
It totally depends on the program. Some make the personal statement optional because they are prestigious and very selective departments that are very focused on your research angle, your research interest, and not necessarily focused on what's the background the student has. It's like we're just focusing on the research, and that's not uncommon, folks. Even in the UCs, there are UCs that are very much inclusive and want to support you, your academic trajectory. They want to look at your background, and there's others that are like, we're just about research. Really, we just want to be highly analytic, and we don't necessarily request the personal statement, only the statement of purpose. Every department will ask you for the statement of purpose because that's your presentation. Who are you? Why are you intended for that program? Why is that program the best department for you to carry out your research? Thank you, folks. Again, if you ever want to work on your personal statement or your statement of purpose in my office hours, I am a resource to you. Um, in addition, the personal statement can serve as a blueprint for other fellowship and grant or scholarship applications. So a little bit more on the testing and exams. As I mentioned earlier, these were waived right now for COVID. But I want to talk a little bit about the strategies for you to prepare for these exams. So I've listed here which test aligns with which graduate program you intend to pursue, and one way to study. So these tests, this is not the type of test that you can think, I'm just gonna wing it. I'm generally pretty good in academics and I got a good feeling, I'll be fine. This is not the test to do that with. This test is not necessarily testing like your wisdom, your knowledge. This test is testing how you know to how you've known and learned to take the test. So it's important for you to become acquainted with the test so you know how to unpack it and address it. Um, Create a study plan. There's different forms of study plans. You might want to pick up a book in the library or get a donated copy or pick up a used copy and read 3 to 5 pages every night religiously, right? And it'll give you a good insight into how the test is formulated. Or you might want to take a whole summer where you're studying during the week with a study group, 3 to 4 hours, 2 to 3 hours, I don't know. But there are different forms of ways to tackle the test, learn about it. What are the sections? What is each section asking you? And then so that you can address it accordingly. Um, there are also prep courses that you can take. There are private tutors you might be able to hire. Yet, if you are organized and self driven, if you have uh, peers who are supportive and who read intelligently with discipline, then you may just create a study group. However, there are also resources online that I'll mention shortly. In the application, another resource to you per se is there's a little box at the end of the application which says something along these lines. Is there anything not included in the application that you would like to share with the graduate committee? So after you've completed everything else, your statement of purpose, uploaded your transcripts, mentioned who's going to recommend you so they can get an email link, there's going to be this little tiny box that is going to ask for that. And the admissions committee do read this, and this is an opportunity for you to be genuine and maybe describe if you have a fear of standardized test. Let's say you took the GRE, your writing skills are up to par, so are your vocab, but your analytical mathematical background is not the best, and you totally bombed that, right? You might want to mention something like I don't have generally um, a background in mathematics, and I'm applying to humanities and social sciences programs where my ability to read and present and write is not an indication of these scores in mathematics, right? Or you have a fear of standardized tests, or for some reason you had to withdraw or you failed a grade and it shows on your transcript due to circumstances that go beyond your control, such as a family hardship or that affected a gap in your education. So this small box at the end of the application is an opportunity for you to showcase something that explains something else in your application components. Question, yes.
Okay. I actually wanted to make a comment because I really, really appreciate you bringing this up.
Cool.
I think there's a very genuine concern from a lot of folks, right? Like, do I withdraw from this class? What will happen if I want to apply to graduate school? So I think this is a really great reminder that one, your grades don't define you. They don't define the type of opportunities you can gain. And so being genuine about, these hardships, as you mentioned, Juan, is really, really important. And again, like, don't let these things, these hiccups, these things that happen in life really deter you from applying to graduate school.
Indeed. This is the other resource that I wanted to mention, magoosh.com. It's online prep courses for the LSAT, for MCAT, for GRE, and so on and so forth. Some universities that I worked with offer this resource free to students. So maybe that's a possibility we can look into at your campus, where we might be able to offer an account to log into Magoosh and do some of these preparatory test courses. Anna, is that something we offer here?
I don't know, but we can research that. No, but let me research that and I'll follow up with our audience and via email.
Okay.
But we do have one more question in the chat, and the student asks, does everyone who is applying for a graduate school program have to take the GRE test?
No, there are schools that don't require it altogether, independent of the COVID pandemic. Maybe it's a state school that's offering a master's, or there are PhD programs, and I've had conversations with professors in graduate committees who have advocated for students and said, you know what, this is a test that was not designed for our communities. It wasn't designed for folks that come from our communities, so it's not fair. And they've made petitions so that the graduate committees do not request the GRE. So, no, there are programs out there that will not require you to complete this graduate test. Good question. Thank you for that. So now a little bit on the writing sample. Uh, Depending on what grad program you're applying to, you will have to render a sample of your work. So if you are doing something in the arts, it might look like a portfolio where you're showcasing your projects in the past. If it's something with film, you might have to provide a link online to where your film is uploaded. But mostly in the humanities and social sciences, if it's reading and writing research related, you will have to provide an essay of some sort. And so work on the sample ahead of time. Ideally, one strategy is to use a sample from a faculty advisor that will be recommending you in that application, someone who has reviewed your work. Share your work with your writing sample with different readers with faculty advisors, with peer advisors, with your mentors, because everybody will provide you different comments and insights. And it's an opportunity for you to get a variety of insights. Also, save your copies of each work. If you're working with a professor and you're sending a different copy to a peer advisor, always remember to name each document, remember who you shared it with, keep those copies separate so then you can take and pick and choose what comments it is that you want to include, what revisions do you want to make in your work. Another thing on the writing sample is that you might want to pick a paper that you wrote for a course with a professor, and rather than just stashing it somewhere after completing your final exams, send an email to your professor and say, I would like to expand my paper. I have intentions of using it for graduate school. Will you please provide me comments? Can we meet a couple months from now and I can render a revision of it? And you can end up polishing your work to the point that you can perhaps publish something before you apply to graduate school. It just aligns you as a better candidate. And when it comes to completing your applications, you have a solid piece of writing. Graduate applications might require you to submit something from 10 to 20 pages in writing. And this includes everything from the abstract to the bibliography. So if, for example, you have a published piece and it exceeds to 25 pages, you may want to include a note in the writing sample in your application. Um, for example, in what follows, it's an excerpt from my published piece, which can be found here in this link, and I omit the bibliography, or I've taken out a section that doesn't necessarily affect too much the flow or argument of the paper. These are all small tips that you might want to consider. We could talk more about that too. So some applications give you the option, or some require to submit a CV or resume, and there are differences. The CV, or curriculum vitae, it's a concise summary of your education background and achievements, and this may align you more with fellowships or internships that are tied to academic work, right? You will have to include your personal contact information, your education degrees, awards, publications you might have received, any teaching or research interest and experiences that showcase your academic skills. Maybe you want to mention too that you're a member of a journal. These are the sorts of things that professors will pick out and align you with certain fellowships, or also when professors are writing your letters of recommendation, they will look into these details and include them in their letter. So yeah, it's like you want to highlight what is the background, what is your academic background behind your statement of purpose. Your resume, I'm sorry, I thought I included a link here, a slide. Your resume is more showcasing your work experience. So if perhaps you have experience working at the Undocumented Spartan Center, you were an intern, or you were a tutor somewhere, or you were teaching, etc. This is an opportunity for you to showcase professional experience. It doesn't mean you can't include your academic experience, but it's more professionally oriented. And it makes a difference in what you want to provide in that application if you are hoping to align with certain fellowships or internships. The letters of recommendation, a little more on the letters of recommendation. I forgot to mention, I also provide you with a sample statement of purpose from San Jose State. I applied to the master's program. I believe it was in 2018, and I gained admission. I give you a copy of that, and we can break that down because each section matters. I fit everything that I meant to do in that department with my background in one page. Other schools might give you 1 to 2 pages, right? So we can go over that if you'd like, and I can help you break it down. And now, one of the last resource here is a sample of a letter of recommendation. So I tell folks, you have to request letters of rec, and then very much like our parents that tell us you got to go to the university, but they don't tell you how to do it, right? You're the first gen. So instead of me just telling you you got to request a letter of rec, I actually broke down steps 1 through 4 and how you initiate the conversation to requesting a professor ahead of time to speak during their office hours and possibly requesting a letter of rec in person. How do you describe your interest and why are you requesting this letter? The email to the professor mentioning the deadline of the program, a list of the courses you took with them, what year did you take those courses, what grade did you receive, and perhaps you want to provide them a copy of your final term or exam with the grade. You also want to provide your recommender with official transcripts, a statement of purpose, and a personal statement. And you want to follow up to make sure that they've completed your letter of recommendation. So here's an example that I've written out in the second half of what that email looks like. How do you even greet the professor? How do you, in writing, say, thank you for meeting with me in your office hours. I'm now following up as we mentioned with the following academic components, application components, and thank you very much. So I've given you this resource as a sample for you to follow. Um, and so now a little bit on why the letter of rec, why is that so important? So it's a pillar of the application and it's something you want to ask ahead of time. It provides information to the admissions committee that it's usually not found anywhere else, not on your statement of purpose, not on your personal statement. This is a faculty advisor speaking on your behalf, and they're quite candid to where they usually require you to waive the right to read the letter. So when you're completing your application, you have an opportunity to mention, okay, this is who's recommending me, this is their email, this is their title, this is their phone number, whatever, and the application automatically sends a request to that professor. Um, Before it sends it out, it asks you as a student, do you waive the right to read this letter? And what that means is, do you thank you. And what that means is that you're not going to read the letter. You usually it's advised for you to waive the right to let the professor write whatever it is that they feel is important speaking on your behalf. And it also shows confidence that there's nothing you're trying to hide. There's nothing that you need to know about. You did your best. The professor is going to speak on your behalf, and you're totally waiving the right to read that letter. Okay. Um, who do you want to get a letter from? Ideally, a professor, someone you took a course with. Um, if it's if the fellowship or if it's a background in employment that completely and totally is relevant to the program you're applying. So maybe you do want to include a letter from an employer or an internship, fellowship supervisor. But ideally, if it's an academic program, a master's or PhD, you want it to be a professor who knows your work. Okay. Um, a little bit more on the letter recommendation. Here's the tip. So some of you might be in the position where you're filling out your application. You're like, okay, I don't have any professors that can recommend me. I never built relationships with them, and now I need 3 letters. So before that is the case, when you sign up for a course, it's a course that you know it's part of your major. It aligns well with the programs that you'll be applying for in the future. Go to the professor's office hours and tell them, Professor, I'm advising you ahead of time that I will be requesting a letter of recommendation. Please pay particular attention to my work and my engagement. It's not, some folks have told me, well, this is a little pushy. You don't want to do that, but come on, like professors are your resource, and they are willing to vouch for you if you are respectful and if you follow protocol. And if you're going to ask for a letter of rec months from now, and they might not remember, and somebody else might come to mind, you want to tell them, pay attention to my work. I will. I'm intending to engage with you and have you recommend me for a program. And this might make a difference if they mention insights that might gain you admission or not. Attend office hours and hold conversations related to your research and their research interest. Always mention to professors, I have intentions of applying to programs. Maybe I don't know precisely where. You know me as an academic, and you know my work. Do you have anyone in mind? Any programs that align well with my interest? They are in conversation with other professors in other institutions, and you might not even know about those institutions. So your professors are your research to align you with programs that may be undocu friendly, or with folks that have a background working with students like us, or that align their research with your research interests. So don't be shy in reaching out to professors. Never accept a letter from a professor who asks you to write it, and then sign it. This is like asking a parent to speak nice about you. They're only going to say all the great things. Only request letters from professors who are willing to write strong letters of recommendation. And like I mentioned in my sample, you have to provide them with a statement of purpose, resume, writing sample, transcripts, all the work, so that the more that they have information, the better the letter will get drafted. We're almost done. I welcome any questions, and then we can engage with some of the documents that we shared here. I can go a little further in anything that I've mentioned. I'm a resource.
All right, I have a question for you, Juan.
Yes.
What would you recommend to students right now in their first, second, or even their junior year, right? As they're thinking about graduate school, but haven't really gotten involved yet
Mm-hmm.
on campus, or maybe haven't built the courage to talk to their faculty? What are some tips you can provide them?
Yeah, folks, it's never late. More and more, our community is engaging in graduate work. There are some great resources out there from folks who are already in programs. So I'll share a little bit about that. Networking with other students who are also in your position, it's not a bad idea. But I would say, in terms of your academics, if you're engaging in graduate work, you will be working with a cohort of students, and you will be working closely with faculty advisors. So this is a good opportunity for you to start building relationships with professors, visiting them during their office hours. They're human. You can talk about other things beyond the classroom, and then somehow align it with your work. Um, Junior year is a very good year to start doing this. Is a very good year to start reaching out to departments where students are first years grad students. They're fresh, have recently completed grad applications, and say, hey, I'm I'm thinking about grad school, and you're already there. Can you give me some tips? There are forums, speaker panels, where folks are eager to share their experience, to mentor you. And it's an opportunity for undocumented students who are in advancing their studies to pay it forward. A lot of us are where we're at because of mentors and resources that we had before, and we are willing to support. So whenever somebody says, hey, I'm a resource to you, take that seriously, and don't be hesitant to reach out and get tips on how you can get involved.
Thank you, Juan, for that. And I do want to emphasize that on our campus, we do have programs like peer mentorship programs, or even graduate programs, where folks can seek for a mentor or get paired up with a mentor that can help them out with research. I know for folks who may have DACA, there is a McNair program here on campus, which is really, really great for folks who are interested in research. And just recently, there is the undergraduate research program, or UROP, And I can send more information and I'll also drop it in the link here for folks who are interested in doing research. But right now, the pilot program is only taking folks within the humanities. Um, and one more question I wanted to ask you, Juan, and I don't know if you're going to be covering this down the, further slides, but um, research can be very intimidating for folks, right? Are there different types of research for folks, and what would that look like?
Yeah. So it's different, right? I mean, if you're, this is a focus of humanities and social sciences and law. Research in law with a professional degree is going to be completely different than psychology or, say, literature or philosophy in the humanities. Um, Research in the social sciences or in psychology, for example, can look like you're running experiments, and you're looking at what has been done. You're reading um, you're reading articles, journal publications, meta analysis, and you're forming conclusions. Maybe you're designing and running um, your own experiments. Research in the literature, in critical race and ethnic studies, in philosophy, for example, where I have my training, it's you're reading books, you're reading material. Most of the time, you're like probably working alone, and you're reading, analyzing, drawing conclusions, producing essays, contributing to journals. Maybe you attend conferences and you showcase your research and your theoretical work, your insights. um, it will look different. One advice I would say is follow what you like doing. If you like running experiments, if you like surveying data with sociologists, if you like being on your own and reading articles and books and watching films and drawing conclusions, then there's subtle differences, but aim towards what's like naturally an inclination and a passion for you. Don't try to do tech just because folks tell you there's future in tech and you're undocumented. How are you going to work? Everybody told me, what are you going to do with a philosophy degree and being undocumented? And I always thought, well, I'll figure it out. This is what I want to do. And now I gain skills from that I'm not necessarily presenting a philosophy paper to you, but I'm able to coherently articulate my ideas, my research findings, and answer questions. Yeah. Um, uh, yeah, question. I don't know how
Okay,
much time.
Juan, one more question from our audience.
Yes,
And
please.
how do you recommend learning what kind of research you enjoy doing if you have never conducted research before?
Okay, so there are programs that will immerse you in like a summer experience to do research in another university, where you're gonna get a mentor or faculty advisor. So that is what I did. There are programs that is like, how do I know what program is right for me? What school? What research interest? Well, there are those programs for first generation students who don't have a history of parents have gone to the university, yet alone grad programs, and they fly you out to another state. They give you a stipend to you can have some spending money. You take seminars with grad students and professors who expose you to how they do research in their discipline so that you can gain insights and maybe spark a new interest. And then you will build relationships with the other peers who form part of the program, and you will get a mentor who may assist you in creating your application components. So that is one resource that I mentioned here. And for example, I can jump ahead. One excellent resource out there is the IRT, the Institute and Recruitment for Teachers in Boston. They fly you out. Like I said, they will give you a grad mentor who will assist you in creating your statement of purpose, in polishing your writing statement. And you graduate from the summer program by submitting 10 applications to grad programs. So that is a very intentional program that provides you exposure to a variety of research interests and also very actively engages you in applying. And you get paid for it. And Boston is beautiful. So look out for these sorts of programs so that you can gain more exposure of what is out there. Um, yes. In terms of a faculty advisor or mentor can make a difference in you gaining admission to a grad program. They are someone you identify who is critical, provides constructive criticism, is detailed, responsible, organized, and will make sure that your application components are proofread, and you're not missing any. You're not missing any T's or dotting any I's. So this is someone who is willing to work with you through the process, who will meet with you regularly to revise your materials. Someone you can visit during office hours or at alternative times, and it falls on you, right? A mentor may be willing to work with you, but you got to do the work of like asking them to meet the deadlines or setting up a time to meet and to revise your work. But try to identify a faculty um, mentor or a graduate mentor who's willing to help you along the way. Meeting deadlines, make sure you submit application materials ahead of time. As I mentioned earlier, this might make a difference if you receive a better financial aid package. Um, Make sure your application is completed on time, even if your recommenders have not completed their letters. You still have to make sure that at some point the recommender submits their letter, but it's often the case that applications will allow the recommender to send their letter probably after the deadline because they don't revise the applications until sometime afterward. But it's crucial that you submit everything in your on your behalf on time, and that you email the recommender saying, "Hey, just a reminder about my letter of rec." You might be nudging them, or you're emailing them to say, "Thank you for submitting it. My application is complete." So on finding the right program, you have to be able to browse through programs and departments and look at the overall culture of the department. Look at the faculty. Are they diverse? Do they showcase what you want to study, your research angle? And you want to identify 2 to 3 faculty members that work in in the area that you want to work on, right? You want to reach out to them if you get an opportunity to speak to them during their office hours. Some of the key questions you want to ask is, "Professor, I'm intending to apply to your program this academic cycle, and I'm wondering, are you going to be on sabbatical next year?" Meaning, are they going to be doing their research, working on their book, and they're not teaching for the year? Or do you have plans of retiring? Are you going to be conducting research at another institution? Um, these are the sorts of questions that when you apply in your statement of purpose and you mention that, professor, it's not in vain. It's very intentional, and it aligns you well with their timelines. Um, does the program offer an MA if you don't finish the PhD? This was mentioned earlier. This is a question you might want to reach out to the grad advisor and reach out to graduate students, ask them about their work. If they are working with the faculty advisor that you plan on working with, a grad student is a great resource to tell you, "Hey, yeah, this person is dead on organized, responsible, they're a good advisor," or, "You know what, I made a mistake. I had to change my advisor because this professor is so busy that they don't look at my work and I'm not advancing in my program." Contacting the department, inquire what funding options are available, particularly to your circumstances. Do they offer TA-ships, fellowships, graduate student researchships? And it is daunting. I've been in your position, and this is something that you might not be comfortable doing. Remember that there are resources on your campus or consultants like me who are willing to reach out on your behalf, so it remains anonymous, to where they don't have to line up your application with your questions. But someone can reach out and say, "Hey, I have an undocumented student intending to apply to your program. What sorts of funding options do you offer for them? Do you have any fellowships for students who do not have work authorization?" Meaning that fellowship is not tied to you having to work and TA. Some schools do. As you'll see, I'll provide you some resources. UCLA is one of the schools that provided the graduate fellowship for AB 540 students. So they know that AB 540 students, a lot of them didn't qualify for DACA, so they don't have work authorization. And those are the kind of fellowships that you want to spot. This was going to include a law school component, so I'm going to breeze over this again. I want to make sure I go through the whole presentation before we wrap it up in like 20 minutes. Um, Law school tips. You will have to take the LSAT, which consists of 35-minute test sections, which test your analytical reasoning, logical reasoning, reading comprehension, and there are unscored variable sections, or which may include a writing sample. Okay, so it's very fast paced. Um, Please consult the Law School Admissions Council. I provide you the link. They answer just about any question related to the exam you can imagine. And also some questions that you might want to ponder about. Why do you want to pursue law school, right? Just like we talked about earlier in the other programs. What do you want to achieve after? What difference do you want to make with this degree? Make sure to address all these questions when you're intending to apply to a program in your prompts. And if you have to revise your statements, there are many undocumented folk who have gone through this, who are now practicing law. And I know of a couple friends who are undocumented and graduated from Santa Clara University. So I know that there are folks who may be willing to um, share statement of purpose samples, personal statements, or just the experience in general. And do remember that if you are undocumented and somebody tells you, well, it's ironic, you're undocumented and you're going to practice law. Independent from that, the law SB 1159 allows for folks to gain professional licenses not only in law, but also in nursing, in accounting, in a whole wide range of fields. So don't let anybody tell you, well, why are you going to law school if you're undocumented? In the meantime that you're in law school, things might happen and you adjust your immigration status. Okay, there's free Lsat Prep on Khan Academy. I don't know how in depth they go, if they go in depth as much as Magoosh, but there's another resource for you all. I provide a breakdown of the LSAT sections more in depth, which we can revise later on. Now, a little bit on financial aid and some resources, and we're going to wrap up, folks. MALDEF, which is the Mexican American Legal Defense Education Fund. MALDEF provides a graduate school and fellowship list, which they update every year. It's about 90 pages, divided by major, divided by research interest, or by program. So MALDEF is a good resource, especially for law, and they offer a law scholarship. There are internal fellowships, particularly in each institution. As I mentioned, the UCLA AB 540 grad students fellowship, they created that. UC Santa Cruz doesn't have it. UC San Diego doesn't. However, they might have something similar. And so this is where it requires of you to go above and beyond in research or reaching out to the graduate division. I know that every UC has a resource center for undocumented students, but do they have fellowships for undocumented folks? Not necessarily. But here's an example of an internal fellowship you want to look out for. And there's also external fellowships. Say you do get admitted to Berkeley, and they work with the Paul D. Soros Fellowship, right? Which is a fellowship. You're bringing money to the department. You're paying you're paying your way through the department, not through department funds, not through university funds, but through external fellowships. And this is a great example of that. Other, yes, questions? Okay, Other student resources which go beyond grad school, which I mean go beyond financial aid, but how do you complete your statement of purpose? Like how do you even navigate grad school? You might be stuck in a you might go to a department where other folks do not look like you, do not have the same walk of life or same immigration status. And there's blogs out there, there's resources. My undocumentedlife.org is a great resource, which was started by Carolina Valdivia, who was undocumented and did her education degree at Harvard. For those of you who are interested in the health field, nursing, medicine, there's phdreamers.org. Again, great resources beyond financial aid. And don't forget to complete your California Dream Act application, even if you're graduating as an undergrad. It's a document that will provide proof of your education, I mean, of your expected family contribution, of your financial aid needs. And if a school requires it for whatever grant or whatever scholarship or fellowship they might need, please complete it. Even though it doesn't work the same way as undergrad, it's still a great document to have. The application opened in October and it's due March 2nd. And lastly, there's a list of graduate fellowships that gets um, updated regularly through Immigrants Rising. And here's the resource for that. There was a question?
Yes. So it's a two-part at this point. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go back to the fellowship piece because I know oftentimes students assume that you have to have DACA or that they're only open to certain undocumented folks, especially kind of, considering that some of these programs, like for example, MALDEF, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're very Latinx. And so, do you have any tips for students who are not Latinx, who don't see themselves represented in some of these fellowships or some of these lists? How do you navigate that? I don't know if you've ever encountered that question.
I have, and there was a note that I had made that Latinx or not, the Maldiv list provides fellowships that are designed by and for Asian groups, for example, or Native Americans. So look into these lists. I know that it's like very Latinx. It comes like strong as like, oh, it's only for Mexicans or it's only for Latinos, Latinas, Latinx. No, their list encompasses a wide variety of ethnicities and racial groups. It even mentions folks who are like visually impaired for certain scholarships. Also, it requires a little bit of being proactive, but some of these opportunities have been opened to undocumented folk or to folk from other ethnicities because there was somebody who picked up the phone and said, hey, would you consider my application? I mean, this is my background and these are the limitations I have or whatever, these are the skills, I think I meet your criteria. And so then folks apply, and oftentimes it's the case that the application was designed for a certain group for whom they don't receive any applicants, and then they give it to you. Or next time around, they change the eligibility criteria altogether.
Thank you, Juan. And the second part, it's more of a statement, or my own piece of advice to
Mm-hmm,
students is that as you're exploring fellowship opportunities, don't just limit yourself to those fellowships that are just for undocumented or AB 540 students, right?
mm-hmm,
Sometimes programs have fellowships that are tied into your academics, right? You don't have to provide a social
mm-hmm.
security number or demonstrate that you have a permission to work in the United States. So explore those options, or as you're getting to know faculty and getting to form relationships with them, don't hesitate to also ask, if those programs are closed off to just folks who have a social security number, is there another way that they can assist you financially? And so it's a fair question to ask. And oftentimes, faculty who are really committed to your success will go out of their way to figure out, how do I make sure that these opportunities are open to students who may not fit the criteria as the application shows. So don't limit yourself, ask questions, and find your allies. That's really, really critical.
Yes, and there's also the private schools, the Ivy League schools, who will fund you independent of your immigration status because they have large endowments of funds. Or there are certain departments at public institutions. I knew of a couple undocumented grad students, one of whom didn't have DACA, and there was, I think it was the MCD bio department. They had a huge endowment of funds, private funds, and they were able to fund the student independent of what the institution had in place. So yes, don't hesitate to reach out to the department. They might have gotten a large pool of funds and will open an opportunity for you. And I mentioned earlier IRT, the institution, yes, the Institute for Recruitment of Teachers at Boston, the program that will provide you mentorship and have you complete 10 applications for grad school. There's also other smaller internships or grants, such as the Institute for Humane Studies fee waiver. They give you $300 to apply for applications. And as I mentioned, an application for grad school can range from 100 to 120, $50. So look out for these opportunities. And as an undergrad, I participated in Pixie Boston, which is Philosophy Inclusive Key Summer Institute. So it was a program designed for students whose background is usually not reflected in philosophy, in academic philosophy programs. And so I had an opportunity to form part of the cohort, and I still work with my mentor from 5 years ago in polishing my writing samples and application components. He was a PhD student then and is now a professor in Pennsylvania. And so these sorts of programs immerse you in a whole different campus with folks who share interest, and you get to know different folks, and you expand your vision of like, where do I fit in? I'm providing you the Santa Clara Law Digital Commons. This is a guide for navigating grad school. It's a resource guide for undocumented students. It provides information on testing, on laws from state to state. And we're going to hyperlink that to the website. It's a great resource. It's provided a lot of the information I took. And lastly, there is no one single route for grad school. Okay, there is no one single route that is the correct one. You have to make a name for yourself, be genuine, and don't try to be someone you're not. Like I mentioned, you're part of a cohort, and maybe uh, that particular person that makes you unique is what the department is asking for. Okay, so get to know them and have them get to know you. That is all I have, folks. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Anna. This doesn't end here. We'll follow it up with office hours, right?
Yes. So yeah, so before we end, I did want to share some, information and some updates as to how you can follow up. So thank you so much, Juan, for all this information. It's a lot. And so what I would recommend for folks is, we will be following up with the recording of the video so you can listen to it, at a different time on your own. But I also want to remind folks, for if you are interested in getting more in-depth information about paying for college, paying for graduate school, there's going to be a third workshop on November 19th. And a lot of the links and information that you've been getting, I know, like in the in the background, I've been dropping tons of links in the chat. So feel free to copy those links and save them on your laptop. Otherwise, just check out our website. So at sjcu.edu/UndocuSpartan, you will find a graduate school tab where you'll have a lot of information, and we will also include the recordings on there. So feel free to check out the website. Also, in our contact page, you will find the link to schedule an appointment with Juan if you would like to have a one-on-one consultation with him about, your interest in graduate school, even if it's just exploring the question about what that is, or if you already have your statement ready to go, right, and you need that revision, or you need someone to, just help you out with it. Reach out to Juan, reach out to us, and yeah, and other than that, I am again really thankful for all of you who have been participating online, and feel free to reach out to us at any point. Thank you so much, and happy Friday for those of you, and have a good weekend. Thank you so much.